to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And they got away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It's a scientific fact that we are all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. Up close and personal. Hey, this is the first post-Caterwaul 2023 episode, so here I am. I've been sleeping for the last week, and I still am tired and exhausted and feeling good. Feeling good. Why am I feeling good, you may ask? Because, dear listener, tonight I'm talking to John Wright, man. That's an important thing. This is episode 336, of course. John Wright of the incredible Dead Bob, Hanson Brothers, abductee into Compressor Head, and some band called NoMeansNo, I guess is the name of it. Some young up-and-comers. Anyway, really excited to talk to this fella. Living legend gets thrown around a lot, but I'll do it. So we're going to be talking to John Wright and all about Dead Bob and everything else. But of course, before we get into any of that, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I am your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer that has been touring and recording for 23 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but who may or may not be household names. This is episode 336. If it is your first time listening to the show, archives of it are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding, at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. If you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around on the internet, or even leave a review. All of that helps people discover the show, beats back the almighty algorithmic overlords, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. So there you go. So without any further ado, I think that's enough ado, isn't it? Let's bring him on. John Wright, welcome to the show, man.
Hello.
Thanks so much for doing it. I know it's kind of a hassle to get you on this the Festivus of Caterwaul makes me incredibly busy time-wise, but I really wanted to get you on, not the least of which because I think this Dead Bob record's great.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. And I guess, you've been very busy with that, and I appreciate you fitting me in when you can.
I appreciate you coming on the goddamn show, man. Look, without the show, it's literally just me talking to myself. And as delightful as that is, it doesn't have as big of an audience. Let's put it that way. This is a cool record. I am curious, and I've done no research whatsoever in this because I just want to hear it from the horse's mouth, if you will. Mm-hmm. How did this come to pass as a record, as an overall concept? Because it feels very band-like to me, despite the fact that there's a lot of different people involved.
By the way, I can't hear you in my headphones.
Oh, well, that's not good.
I can hear you through the computer, but...
Okay.
Now we're echoing. No, it's okay.
Great.
Look, NoMeansNo. My brother more or less retired back in 2014. Our last show, kind of as the full band, playing was over in Germany in 2013, and then we did do some Hanson Brothers shows in 2014, and then Our last show was kind of an unplugged thing for Breakout West in the Western Canadian Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So our due was to be in the halls of a minor house, but no, it was awesome. It was we had a really good time on that. And it's whatever. It's nice to be liked and honored. So
It's nice to be recognized for your work.
nice to be recognized. Yeah. So. Yeah, and then I got right busy with Compressor Head just around that time. And if for the people out there who don't know who Compressor Head is, it's a band of robots from Berlin, and the fellows putting that band together were big Hanson Brothers fans, and they wanted this band of robots to be, like a real band. They're designed to play the actual instruments. The instruments are 99% not modified for them, but and just to be set up and play like a punk rock band. And they wanted music kind of like the Hanson Brothers, Ramones, that kind of pop punk, I guess. And they were big fans, also fans of NoMeansNo, but that's really kind of what they wanted. And they got a hold of me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in writing some music?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." And it's kind of odd, and maybe. And then they sent me an airplane ticket to Berlin, and I guess it's real.
Yeah, exactly. Once there's airplane tickets purchased.
Yeah, when somebody flies you to Europe, you go, okay, all right. I guess this is a real thing. So, and it was amazing. It was like an incredible experience. Really, in writing the music was fun, and the songs. I didn't write all of the songs, but most of them, and enlisted some help, but then to get the robots to play it,
what a sentence. Yeah.
Well, it's just that, of course, the robots don't do anything they're not programmed to do, and that's, of course, every last thing that they do is programmed. So to get it to be natural, like when guitar players play, at first I just, here's the notes, okay, but that's like not even halfway there. It's like how those notes are played and how they sound,
the feel of it. Yeah,
and the whole idea was that not to sound robotic, right? To sound like an actual band up there playing, and so
it's like the opposite of Kraftwerk.
Yeah, pretty much the opposite. Actually, I did an arrangement of just as an aside. I did an arrangement of a Kraftwerk song for them, but the song called "We Are the Robots," and all I did.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
All I
didn't know that.
Make it a heavy metal sound, like a death metal song.
Yeah.
And called it "We Are the Humans."
That rocks.
Other than that, it's exactly the same. All the words and everything. It was. They never got that far, unfortunately. I still have the song. I might just do it myself.
It's still a good idea. I mean,
I was pretty happy with the arrangement. It was good.
And, it almost reminds me of like when the Sparks did that. There's that horrible Clash song where it's called "We Are the Clash." That's on that last Clash record, just Joe Strummer and the Bros, and Sparks covered it. And I was like, oh, that's very funny because they're in fact not the Clash.
Of course. Yeah,
but neither was the Clash at that point. So
they were there. To be perfectly honest, I'm not at all familiar with that because I stopped listening a long time ago.
It's just a weird piece of banal minutia. But anyway, so Compressor Head, which is fascinating. We could just talk about Compressor Head. It's so fascinating to me, But go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's as I was saying, like they have to play like a punk rock band, so it's like trying to get all the nuance, and they had to redesign a bunch of stuff like. The guitar players and the bass players, they have to, they mute their strings and all this sort of stuff, right? And it's subtle.
You got to program the robot to palm mute. Yeah.
Change all the.
Amazing.
They had to work on the mechanics to get it to work, and then we soon realized, well, they didn't have a singer yet, so they knew they had to build one of those, and then we realized that the one guitar player couldn't do everything, all of it very well. Could do some things really well, but not other things. Could do solos and stuff really well.
I played with musicians like that.
Yeah, so we realized that we really need another guitar player. And the fellow Marcus, who built the first guitar player, He wanted to build another one anyway because he also learned a lot more about how it could be better. And so they embarked on that and built the second guitar player and the singer. And and then we got them tuned to the point where everything was sounding pretty good. And then we wanted to record the album. And the beauty of digital recording is like when you're multi-tracking the instruments, well, first of all, if they have to play it again, it's exactly the same.
They're very consistent.
Absolutely no difference from one performance to another. But you can do it all individually and line them up perfectly, of course. They don't have to play together. But you see all the wave files. So you see the wave files, and you can see when you're listening to the sound, and they're rocking in the studio and they're playing, and it's like there's some blurriness or something, and you can go in and see, the kick drum or the bass player, this note is like 3.5 milliseconds ahead of the kick, which kind of obscures the what do they call them, the transients or whatever. And so we'll just go in. That would be 8 frames, and go in, and you just like go into the MIDI, move the note or move the command to exactly where it needs to be. So you can rough it to the point where it's all good, and then analyze it and make all the tiny little minutia changes to just bring it all into focus. And that was amazing. I mean, it took a long time, and it was quite a process, especially writing. You kind of have to deconstruct why rock and roll sounds the way it does.
Right.
What overall creates the energy. And it's not just lining stuff up on a grid. It's how loud and how and where the bass player is and the drummer is in relation to each other, and it's milliseconds, right? As well as just the nuance of playing. It's like, wow, it was a lot to figure out to get it to work, and it did. In the end, I only saw one show where they played all the songs in a concert in their record release. Strangely enough, in a climbing resort in the Pyrenees of Spain.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah. And it was. You can see a bunch of that online, and it's really cool. And there's the ironic story about that is that I remember talking to the guitar player Marcus, and I was saying, why? It was one of the first times down there. Why'd you build this? He built this guitar player independently of the fellow named Frank, who built the drummer. They had built them independently for different reasons. And
they just both had the idea to build robots to play music at the same time. That's okay.
No, yeah. And he said, well, my friends, he was living in a squad, I forget, Studebaker or something in Hamburg. Mm-hmm. And his friends would be in bands, and they'd play, and then they'd come off stage, and then they'd all be arguing in the dressing room. And he'd be like, fuck, what do you guys just, you got to be a band and be out there and playing, and it was all good. Like, what's the fucking point of arguing?
Right.
Well, if you've ever been in a band, there usually isn't a point, but there seems to be one. And anyway, so he said, if only the bands were just robots and go out and do it, and none of the bullshit circling around the band. And then consequently, of course, after the record was done and all this, then all the humans started arguing with each other. The robots were fine.
Yeah, the robots are aces, but the humans.
Mission accomplished. Now what about the programmers? So, unfortunately, the personalities kind of fell apart, and they didn't get too much further past their record release, and so the project has lingered for a long time. And I know that the Frank, the drummer, the guy that built the drums, he also has the bass player, and he built the singer, and he's found and determined to build himself a guitar player, but one that plays 2 guitars at the same time, so we can get all the guitar parts in without having to build 2 robots.
Have one of those like the Jimmy Page guitars that has.
Yeah, exactly. What was that L.A. glam band where the guy had 4 of them?
Yeah. Well, I think Cheap Trick had the 7 neck guitar.
Yes,
which is more of a prop, of course. But,
yes, of course. Or who's that Japanese guy that had the surfboard guitar?
Oh. Yeah, that's right. Wow, pulling from the well on this one. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and it's so funny because you'd like to think that okay, well if you have a robot band, it's like the one band that's not going to have creative differences. It's like we're doomed.
Oops.
Gotta get AI to do it. I guess I don't know.
AI. Well, it's the AI robots. They only do what the humans are
Right.
programming them to do. Now that might change. But for now, they're only doing what they're told.
It's like the I don't know if you remember that the 80s drug ads. I learned it by watching you, Dad. Where it's like that, except for arguing about inane stuff. Okay, so compressor heads a thing. That's something
That's a thing. And on a personal note, I I'd split up with my wife and got a divorce, and this is a second relationship. So I have 2 children, and that all kind of happened in about 2012. And then I found myself like having to go find a place to live in Vancouver, and I was like down and determined. There's no way I'm going to move into a basement. I've been there, done that. I'm not going to do it again. And I have a wonderful cabin and place to live north of here, up north of northwest of Vancouver. If you have to take 2 ferries to get there, but you head north up the coast, and right at the end of the road, the Highway 101, which goes right down past your old neck of the woods.
Yep. Well, it's a beautiful drive.
It is, and apparently it goes all the way to Tierra del Fuego. They not necessarily called the 101, but
that's apparently one of those like there are these lists of like drives you have to do before you die, and it's like, well, if you're independently wealthy, perhaps.
Yeah.
I mean,
got a lot of time in your hands.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds lovely. Let's go. I just have bills to pay. Yeah.
Apparently, there's in the Isthmus of Panama. There's apparently one stretch where there isn't a road, and you don't want to go there anyway if you value your life. So but
minor technicality.
Yeah, but other than that, you can actually physically drive an automobile or a car or whatever on a road all along the Pacific coast of North and South America.
Which is kind of amazing.
There's
not a lot of places you can do that on this planet.
Right. And I think you could circumnavigate Australia, but don't quote me on that. That's road, Highway 101, ends in Lund, British Columbia.
Right.
And that's where I live.
Yeah,
just a little beyond the end of the road, actually. And,
so you're there to greet the recreational drivers that have come up with Jared.
You must be tired.
Yeah, exactly. Hand him a beer. Hey, here you go. There's worse jobs to have, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it's that's who ends up at the end of the road. Not necessarily the long distance motorists, but just people who just try to get to the end of a road somewhere and be there for all sorts of different reasons. And there was like hippie communes there, and lots of draft dodgers in the 70s coming up. Ended up in Lund and beyond. Yeah, for sure, lots of them. And then you have the people that just there's too many people in the city, and I can't deal with people, so I got to go somewhere where there's no people, but I still want to go to the store. And
right, I would have some degree of human comfort.
I'm not into trapping my food.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to see anybody, but I just accept the guy at the store.
Yeah.
And
once a week or something, just to pick up provisions. Yeah,
but there's that type, and retired loggers and retired fishermen.
Yeah.
Just north of us in Bliss Landing is like the guy that used to own the Canucks, and what was he from Seattle? What was his name? I can't remember. Billionaire, right? So there's billionaires to people in tents. This is the gamut at the end of the road. So beautiful place, and I don't fault anybody for wanting to end up there and live there. It's gorgeous. I have a lovely place. But so I moved up there, and this was like in 2013. I moved up permanently from the city, and this was actually the first time in my life I'd lived in my own place by myself.
Right.
Yeah, literally, and. So I just got right into, and NoMeansNo was still just at the end, and compressor head was just sort of getting going, and I just kind of went on a massive music writing spree. I had all this time by myself, no distractions from anybody, and got on the computer, started learning GarageBand basically on my Mac and figuring out, and just started. I had a project. I had to write songs for one band, and I just wrote a whole bunch of other stuff. And I would resurrect old demos, stuff that was written years earlier for NoMeansNo, but never became anything. Just all these songs in various stages of completion, and then just picked away at it for years. I mean, the compressor head thing became an album, and that was great. But I had all this sort of archive of songs, loads and loads of songs, and then I got involved in a coffee shop and a pub, and I actually own a pub that's not open now. We struggled, and then COVID came along. And
I heard about that. Yeah,
just like everybody else. Yeah, just like everybody else. And suddenly everything stops, and you have all this time in your hand, and my life isn't utterly dominated by the pub, and I newly built a little workshop for myself. And, hey, I can put my drums in here. I've never had my drums set up where I lived.
Really?
Well,
wow.
It's not a practice place.
Well, I guess, yeah, it makes sense. Drums, that's like the one thing you can't really do at home usually.
So. Yeah. I mean, it did in my mom and dad's house. That's what, that's how Robbie and I started, banging away in the basement down in the suburban Victoria. Suburban bliss in Victoria.
Right.
And
I hear they love that in suburbia.
Yeah, they do. That's a thing. It was anyway. I don't know, probably still is.
I mean, Victoria is a special place, though. I mean, that's a really beautiful area. But
it bred a lot of punk rock is essentially white suburban music, really predominantly, right? And Victoria produced lots of great music. Most of you never heard. Sure. And like NoMeansNo kind of got out of there and got out out into the world and did our thing for years. And the Dayglow abortions were still going, actually. Unfortunately, Murray has cancer, so I don't think he's doing too well right now. But so I set my drums up and okay, this is awesome.
Have them there. Why not?
Have them there. I started banging away again, and I listen to these demos. Okay, I'll just start, because I would demo a song with, I'd either program the drums or we'd build loops or a combination of the two. I'd like to try to make the demo sound as natural as possible. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I'm just going to start replacing all these drums with my live drums. And at GarageBand, I can't multi-track, so I've just set up a sort of a stereo pattern of mics around my drums and started playing to the demos. And it's like, hey, this sounds pretty good. And then the songs start actually sounding like real songs. And so with this downtime of COVID, I just started finishing some of this stuff.
Right. But instead of just leaving it unfinished, it's actually, you got the time. Why not just finish this off, right?
Exactly. And I liked a lot of this stuff and wanted to kind of see it be, finished, completed, a song. There it is. So I did, and then the idea of releasing it was, with this whole kind of DIY, everybody, you go on Bandcamp and get your stuff up streaming. So, and the pub was, becoming less and less of a viable option for me, and so I thought, well, let's just put a record out for fun. I finished a bunch of songs. I put together the order, the one you hear on the record, and thought, oh, this is great. Let's put it out. And that's basically what I did. It's how it got there, and that's why it's there. And now I'm trying to put together a band. Well, I have put together a band. But if you'd asked me a year or two ago, are you going to release records and be a band and go tour? No.
Wasn't on the agenda necessarily.
It was not on the agenda. So this is all kind of new as well for me again, kind of rekindling a bunch of old energies and all the things that you need to be a band, all the infrastructure, just all the nuts and bolts of being a band. It's all got to start that engine over again. So it's a challenge as well as exciting and learning. I'm a newbie. It's not the same world as it was 10 years ago.
It certainly isn't, no. And in a way, in many ways, things are a lot easier. But then also, it's like a lottery for people's attention for like anything now, which is crazy. So all that said, with the record, which I quite like, I think that it's varied, but not not purposefully so. And honestly, there's a couple songs on here that, if you were just not paying attention or just had it going on shuffle or something, could be a NoMeansNo song.
Well, one of them actually is a NoMeansNo song.
Well, yeah, that one obviously, but
it might stick out as, hey, wait a minute.
Hey, I know this one. But
that sounds like NoMeansNo. Holy crap.
But I think that there's always the thing when you have a new thing, like a new name that is imbued with meaning by the art that is created, that you don't necessarily get everybody from the other thing to come along to it, because first of all, they have to be aware of it. So that's the first problem. Then they have to actually actively engage with it. But it's very interesting because I think that you've done something kind of unique in the fact that there's a through line through it for folks that are fans of the band, but there's also this new stuff as well that definitely just sounds like a dude who's very, very good at composition and songwriting, kind of exploring new territory.
Yeah, well, they're not new to me. That's the thing.
Right.
But yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, there's lots of stuff that I have written that was never performed by NoMeansNo because it was just not, NoMeansNo was not the band to do it.
Right. And there's no shortage of songs anyway for NoMeansNo, especially as the catalog grew too, right?
It was, but when I grew up in the 70s learning drums, I was totally into big band, and I've later discovered I kind of went on a little TV theme obsession, and because I wanted to write a theme song for the pub, which I did actually. I wrote
that's right.
5 of them.
I forgot about that. Yeah. That's awesome.
And then when I was going back and over theme songs, they're their own thing too. They're the way
they really are, and it's an art. It's an art.
It is. They have a different arrangements. It's varied, of course, but most of them are under 2 minutes, and some are only 45 seconds long. I think the longest, I can't remember which theme song it was close to 3 minutes. It's like, well, I guess they didn't have a lot of content for their show.
It's like draw it out.
Some were like full songs, and of course I listened to a lot of it from the 70s.
Yeah,
the ones I was familiar with, and realized how influenced I was by 70s television themes.
That's awesome.
Oh my God, I kind of write songs like this. And,
right.
Streets of San Francisco was like one of my favorite songs. I mean, it's a classic.
It's amazing, yeah.
And playing in the big band with the horns and all that, I loved it. But, when my brother came home with the Ramones and the Sex Pistols on a 4-track, and he moved back when I was 16, 17 years old, and he's 8 years older than me, and he had moved away, and he came back and lived in a tent in my parents' backyard. And so then all of a sudden, at first I'm like, I don't know about this. Is this real music?
Right. Well, and that's, one of the things that's about your style. Like you're a hard-hitting rock drummer who plays with trad grip, which is that's not super common.
Yeah, that's how it was taught, and there was no point in changing. In fact, my first teacher was in grade 6. I was like 11 years old, and you weren't allowed to play match grip. He was an old jazz guy, and no, drummers play this way. That's the way you play. Okay.
I think it's like what? I think Ginger Baker, right? That's like good. I'm trying to think of other big There's just not a lot of people that do it. So, and especially we're thinking of
Stuart Copeland, I think.
Stuart Copeland, of course. Oh,
yeah. He was.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, he was pretty good.
He's all right if you're into that kind of thing. The
big influence on me. Yeah.
So when punk rock comes around, because you got to remember, and for folks just to establish context, and I always have to do this for either the people that have so damaged their brains from drinking and whatnot that they don't remember, or for the younger audience too. This is early on in punk rock. This is really, it's still all very new.
Exactly. Yeah. And
It's like
yeah,
78, 79, right? Something like that.
78, 79. We released our first half a single in 1980.
Yeah.
And you listen to that, and you listen to some of the early songs, maybe stuff you probably could not even find. But Wormies, I mean, you listen to Wormies, go, this is No Means No, what? That was a stupid little, well, not stupid, it was a fun little pop song. I mean,
It's just different.
Kind of that's what I did.
Yeah.
I wrote pop songs, and then, but I listened to, Gang of Four, and I'm like, oh, do a pop song, but it's got to sound like Gang of Four, but it's still a pop song, so my writing was all over the place and had been all the time. My brother was, he went through all the genre. He was like, in the 60s, listening to all the crazy 60s music, the hippie music, and my mom yelling down the stairs, turn off that devil's music. And,
That's awesome.
well, you talk about the divide today, and I just saw my brother yesterday or day before. I'm down in the Lower Mainland right now. I'm at my son's house, and I was down to meet with the other musicians that I'm going to play with, and we were talking and just whatever, shooting the shit, and he talking about that in the '60s, like nobody went to shows that were over the age of 21.
Right.
And
it was the youth music.
As soon as you're an adult, you despised all that, or it was like, no, you have to grow up. And kids and parents did not get along. They did not see eye to eye. They liking that music meant you were a revolutionary, dangerous, literally. Like when the cops in Detroit go in and start shooting the students, just because they're radical, dangerous people, and we need to subdue them. I mean, that was the attitude. And
I can only imagine a parent hearing a kid coming home with no fun and playing on the table. What is this? Just
grow up.
This is just noise.
I think a lot of young people. Now I'm at the age where I say that.
Right, that's fine.
I mean, it's not a lived experience for them, but growing up in the 60s and 70s was a thing, like growing up anytime, and the attitudes of music are radically different now than they were then. And then it was, of course, the irony being when punk rock came around and started listening to the Ramones and all this sort of stuff, and wearing some torn jeans and being a punk rocker. Then all the rock and roll guys who would be beat up by the cops in the 60s, now they're coming around and beating up the punk rockers. Like, what do you listen to this fucking shit for?
Right, yeah.
So here, force you to listen to this Yes album.
Yeah. You're going to listen to Heart of the Sunrise and you're going to like it.
Yeah, it's like, fuck. And then I never understood that. It's just, why would you want to fight someone because of the music they like?
It seems pretty arbitrary, right?
Who cares? You don't have to listen to it. You're not invited. So, I don't know. Anyway.
Let it be. But
just let it be. God's sakes. Yeah, so now I kind of lost my train of thought. Where was I?
Well, so coming up and kind of coming from a big band background, right? And
exactly. So the music I've written over the years is it infuriated, of course, my brother and Andy, and then Tom's like, okay, you don't write in this fucking key,
Yeah.
What are you asking me to play? Yeah, super easy when it's like the
right.
Okay, so it was fun. And it forced the band to sound differently, and the arrangements, because I'm really more of an arranger than I am a writer. Well, sort of both, but
it's a very specialized skill, and one that's frequently not recognized by people outside of music.
It's hugely important, and you can really tell the difference with a well-arranged song and one that's not particularly well-arranged.
Sometimes I feel like I'd like to offer my services to other bands, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Right. You want a hand? Want a hand with that? Anyway, moving on. So you start to define your own voice within the band, right? It's this exciting time where it's still like before there's a rule book almost of oh no, it sounds like this. Punk rock sounds like this. It's sort of anything goes.
Like always, since time immemorial. These are the rules.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, I can just recall, and again, my context is different because I didn't find NoMeansNo until I already worked at a record store when I was like 17, and you guys were more than a few albums in. But I was definitely, my first impression was like, wow, this doesn't sound like anything else I've heard, which is always for me is a plus usually. It goes one of two ways: I either despise it or I'm interested and want to learn more.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like what you don't like at the beginning, you don't really know why you don't like it, and then you sort of start listening to it, and then you go, "Oh, wait a minute."
A couple of my favorite bands are like that. I hated them at first, and then I was like, garbage.
Yeah. Devo is the classic example for me. Like, I just didn't understand that first album when it came out. I mean, when did that come out? 78, 77?
Are we not, man? That sounds right. Yeah, it was really early on.
I'm like 15 years old and trying to go to a Count Basie show if I could.
78. It was August 78, according to the internet.
Just starting to get introduced to this, to all that all the punk rock and all this new music that was exploding at the time.
Yeah, and then you're hearing like Shrivel Up, and you're like, what is this?
And again, what struck me is the arrangements.
Right. Yeah.
And just how fucking weird they were.
Yeah, you hear something like their deconstruction of Satisfaction, and you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah, just fucking. But then they became my favorite band.
Yeah.
One of my biggest influences, I think, was Devo, I would say. I just loved them, I mean, they kind of eventually went pretty pop, but but those first three albums were just.
I actually, a lot of people, I've been lucky enough that Jerry Casale of Devo's come on the show a few times.
Oh, yeah.
Who's like one of my favorites because he's like the dark one. Everyone knows Mark, but he's the dark one, and like those two together make that weird alchemy. But they put out that record in like 2010 called Something for Everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, first of all, I love that it's like brick wall mastered, like modern music. Like it's so Devo because everything in the conception of it is that they're going off of like what it is to be like sort of subversive then, like in that time. But the songs are really good. But it's this aggressive. It's a mix in this aggressive modern way. Anyway,
I have to admit I've not heard it.
Well, and especially because there was a couple of those last records before that not for me.
Yeah, they kind of went off into La La Land there,
but I love that record so much that I actually asked him to come on. I think it was the 10-year anniversary of it, and I was like, let's just go over that record because I love that record. More people should know about it. But anyway, that's a different show. People can look in the archives for that. I'm talking to you, God damn it.
Yeah, well, Devo was a big part of the story, and like I say, the arrangements are just, and then Gang of Four, for instance, another big
Hugo,
because the arrangements are just great.
Yep, I mean, and Entertainment has to be one of the all-time. One of the most best all-time records. It just sounds crazy. It's a weird sounding record.
It's
objectively.
weird, yeah.
Like,
but then I got told, we were doing some illicit materials, and then I got completely into the Resonance.
Talk about theme songs. The commercial album that blew my mind when I first heard it. I was like, how are they making a song that's only a minute long? This is crazy.
And they're all great. There's these little nuggets. But and we covered one. We covered
That's right.
Would We Be Alive?
Yep.
Because it's just a great song, and their version is great. We just we rearranged it to be a dancey fucking rock song, and didn't end up on their tribute album. I thought we were overlooked, for God's sake. But
how dare you, sir? Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, just like you did that. Forward to Death on the acapella one. That was great.
Yeah, Jello was like, they're making fun of me. No.
The point was that it worked without instruments. It was still a good song. It was all there. I thought it was great. It also stood out too, which is also nice on a
If you do something really radically different, you tend to stand out. The trick is to do it well. Make it work. You don't want to stand out like that's the one. Like, this one I just
that one.
Well, that one again. Oh no. Well, yeah. I mean, it was somewhat conscious. I mean, we Andy, for instance, just refused to play his guitar normally.
A very interesting guitar player. Yeah,
and that's the thing. He didn't want to be. It didn't want it to be formulaic. And talking about how the sound of NoMeansNo evolved, just because Robbie and I started writing songs together, and then we joined like this, B circuit cover band playing like hits of the 60s and 70s as the rhythm section. Somebody we met in the local music store was looking for a bass and drummer, and went, "Oh, we'll do that." Just what's it like to go to bars and play music, right?
Music that people know and are interested in
Yeah.
singing.
My brother, his one singing chore was Sultans of Swing.
Oh yeah, the Dire Straits
He
song.
did very well.
Yeah.
Play a bass and sing Sultans of Swing. And we had a guitar player, of course, who could play everything exactly like the artists we were covering.
Right.
Anyway, that was quite an experience. But and then we were still writing, we were writing together, but we didn't really know anybody else to play with necessarily. I had friends, but they weren't musicians, and there was other musicians in town, in Victoria, where we were mentioning earlier. And so Rob was like, "Well, let's just," he'd heard PIL and whatever. It's like, "Well, let's just do bass and drums. I'll just start writing some songs on bass." And he had sort of started learning to play the bass in order for our home recording. But then he picked it up more seriously and just started writing songs for bass and drums, and that's how the album Mama was the result of that. That was a large bulk of what we were writing in like 1980. So which was fun, and also for me, what was fun being always thinking about the arrangements and how the songs are laid out, and that with just bass and drums, the drums have to do something more and more musical. And because I was more of a jazz-trained drummer, the idea of your drum set is not just a beatbox. It's an instrument that you want to elicit sounds from that seem appropriate at certain moments in the song. Sometimes that is like hardcore, played as fast and hard as you possibly can, to not doing that and doing other things. And so making those songs up and developing those songs was great fun. It was very creative, but it's also just bass and drums. So when you go out and play, there's no other bands like it. And when Andy was actually, I was in another band with him, which was more of a kind of a new wave punk band, more melodic songs. He was writing, and another fellow, Kevin Lee, on bass writing. And I joined as a drummer, and then that kind of disbanded. And we're like, but Andy, he's a front man. He's a great performer, great guitar player. We're like, we want you to come. Let's play. Why don't you join NoMeansNo? And he was all reticent. He was like, no, I'll ruin it. It's like, you don't,
because you had a defined thing in his mind.
Yeah, that's your thing. And we're like, well,
yeah, it doesn't have to be. I mean,
we'd like to do something more too. So it took a little kind of convincing to get him aboard. And then we started out. We'd play sort of half the set as two-piece, and then he would come on and play some songs, and all those kind of early NoMeansNo songs were being written at that time. And he kind of worked his way in, but then he was all about not stepping on the bass and not being that color on top of this foundation of bass and drums that we kind of had started building and working on.
Yeah, very judicious in that way as far as where he chose to play and interject.
Yeah. So it was very deliberate in that respect, but also it was an organic process of creativity. So that's kind of how this band sound, really, why it's not the same as other bands. It's just the way it developed and the direction we took it at that time.
Well, and he's in the first record he's on a Sex Mad, right? If I remember correctly, like he's
the
first full length record, I should say.
The full length, yeah. He was the You Kill Me EP with Bob. Right. Okay, Bob.
Exactly. Hey, heard of this guy?
Yeah. So, yeah. So Sex Man was the first full length, which I listen to now and go, oh my God, what a mess.
Really?
Because we're totally, control freak DIYs, like, in the studio, like every engineer's nightmare.
Yeah, that's what everybody wants, for sure.
Yeah. So, it's taken many years, and I've been honing my engineering skills and getting better at it, but the early days, kind of odd recordings would pop out. And Sex Man was definitely an odd sounding record, but a good bunch of songs.
No, absolutely, and it still holds up. And I think that's it was around that time. I think that you started in with Jello around that time, right?
Yeah, what we
86
did
or
is
so?
we recorded that album and went on tour in Canada. It was our first cross country out to, well, we didn't go to the Maritimes, so we got out to Montreal and back, and it's kind of our first big long tour.
That's pretty good when you're on the for people that don't know Canadian geography. That's a pretty good run,
And
man.
especially back in that day, there wasn't a lot of places to play.
I mean, some might argue in some areas there still aren't.
Yeah, well,
You can do it, but
you could do it. Yeah, well, it's not
even Regina is like
Albuquerque to fucking Dallas. That's a journey.
Yeah.
Not a lot in between. And certainly, the following year in '87, we did our first U.S. tour. It's like 7 weeks. I don't think we played a Friday or a Saturday night anywhere.
It's the Monday night only tour. Yeah,
exactly. Lots of 3 days off, and do you mind if we sleep here for a few days? We'll do the dishes. And
yeah.
so, anyway, we got all the way across Canada and played 5 shows in Montreal. I think it was 4 at least, probably 5 shows. We were there in Montreal for a week.
Nice.
And seemed to have these little shows everywhere.
We're supposed to be in for a week. I mean, it's got its own vibe, right?
Yeah, Montreal's awesome. And it was awesome back then. And we met some nice people. And one of them, a group of musicians and stuff, there was also a record label called Psyche Records.
Yeah.
And after they'd come and seen us and whatnot, they were like, well, we want to put your record out. I was like, okay, awesome. So Sex Man was recorded and released on Psyche in Canada. So then when we went down to the States and Debbie Gordon, who was managing AT, came out to see us and brought Ruth Schwartz, I believe, from Mornam Records to come, and we played with Victim's Family for the first time.
Yeah, Victim's Family, sure.
So that was one time when they played before us. We were just some band from Canada, but we were headlining a show in Berkeley or something, and then Victim's Family played before us, and it was just like, okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, hell of a band, right?
Yeah, we got to follow this. All right, here we go.
Right, like most of the time, it's like you feel like you're coming from like Saturn or something, and then like these.
Yeah, it was just like, holy shit, this is so good. And
yeah,
it's
like, wow, it's like King Crimson was a punk band. Crazy.
Yeah. Oh, we were just listening the other night again. My son, actually, who is 23 years old now, I guess, turning 24. He was been obsessed with Headache Remedy for the last 2 months. Been on repeat. It's such a great album.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So good. And
can't mess with it.
But Ruth convinced. We had sent a tape to Jello actually, and we didn't really get any response. But they dragged him down to see. Again, we played a couple shows in the Bay Area and dragged him out, and he liked it. And Debbie was like, "Well, their record's done. It's out in Canada. It's all ready to roll. So
right.
Let's just put it out." So that's how we ended up getting on AT, and Sex Man was the first release there.
Yeah, and that was like a 9-album run. I mean, not counting the record you actually, the collab LP and all that. That was a pretty good partnership. Before you started doing the wrong records.
And when we left AT, we left because Europe had became where we made our money, where the best shows were, and the distribution of our records there was terrible, and they were all super expensive, and people were constantly whining at us like, "Why are your records so expensive?" So we wanted better European distribution, and but AT was very loyal with Mordam Records and didn't want to change. And our manager at the time wanted to have a different distributor. And it had nothing to do with AT. It was more trying to make our European presence work better for us.
Because that's where your bread and butter was.
That's where our bread and butter was. And we ended up, it was not a good decision because we ended up with Southern Records, who were great at the beginning, but ended up, basically not paying us anything.
Yeah, that's a sad story.
So that was whatever. It's that's what happened. But the saddest part of that is when back, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, when I started the process of like, we're not a band anymore. We just want to hand our catalog over to AT so they can get it out and keep it out for posterity, and our contract, as far as I'm concerned, was all null and void anyway and long overdone, and they hadn't sent us a statement for years. So,
Right.
Well, this is over, right? And then, Allison, the woman running it, she wrote back and forth a little bit, and then she just ghosted me. And I tried, but the thing is, they had all the masters and artwork.
That's right, because there was like a moment in time where you basically couldn't get any of the records.
We didn't, and then they're all gone. Like we have none of those masters or artwork anymore.
So no records out there, and no ability to make new ones.
They all have to be built again. I mean, a CD is essentially a master. I mean, you can remaster.
Sure, I mean you could,
from a CD. And
have you heard of this thing that they're doing, that these big corporate streaming entities are doing, where they're basically just disappearing shows as like a tax write-off, and there's like poofing it out of existence?
No.
Oh yeah, it's really insidious. Like, and this is one of the many things about streaming that I find so odious. But they're starting they're like, they'll write off a show, but that basically means that they just disappear it completely. And since there's no physical media for it at all, it's just gone.
Oh yeah,
which is harrowing. But
is that like for podcasts or more than bands or?
No. I mean, for like television shows, like for entire like shows that television shows that are only on the television because they're on a streaming service. Like it's it's really gross. Like it's kind of like a, I don't know. It sounds like a nightmare scenario if you're like someone to put your heart and soul into something for like literal years, and then it's like, oh, it's just gone now.
Yeah,
like, there's no ability to see this anymore.
No physical copy.
And that's my corollary to that, with like when the records just kind of were just disappeared off the face of the planet, unless you already had one,
Yep. There's a lesson, kids. Always print some CDs.
Exactly.
Regardless if they sell.
Exactly.
You have them. They're yours. They're in your hand.
They don't take up that much room.
Yeah, they really don't. They don't weigh anything. That was the greatest thing too, when CDs like CDs and vinyl, the whole argument.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you ever had to carry around 10 boxes of vinyl, like drag it across the country and back.
Yeah, we should fit to make some equipment in this van too.
Yeah. Well, this is the band van, and this is the vinyl van.
Yeah, right. You have a separate van for it. Yeah, exactly. No, it's a nightmare.
Like, CDs, awesome. They weigh nothing. They fit this little corner here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are this is the real sexy stuff when it comes time to touring that nobody wants to hear about.
Yeah. We got
space logistics.
Story.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll save that for Van Packing Monthly, the new podcast.
Tetris, the Van Tetris.
The Van Tetris. That is a skill.
That's going to be a thing of the past too, because who can tour in a van now? Like, who could pay like $300 to fill up every 4 hours? And and so all the amps are like this big now.
Yeah, everybody's moving down to combo amps.
Puts it in their backpack.
Yeah, I still do it. I still do it. And I can confirm it's very expensive.
Yeah.
and guess what? The amount of money the bands are getting, still not that much more.
Yeah. Well, what was somebody telling me that? Now I'm not going to get the math right. Like, minimum wage was.
Oh God, it's so depressing.
In 1972, it was like $1.50 an hour, and you could go and buy a record for $3.
Yeah.
So it was 2 hours of labor to buy an album.
So you had to really know that this is going to be awesome to do it. If it wasn't, oof.
Yeah. So, and now minimum wage here in BC is now 17 and a quarter.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So. Don't complain to me if you have to pay $35 for your album.
Minimum wage is so funny. We would like to pay you less, but we're legally not allowed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
So, it's like, the cost of doing everything and that filling that tank and but Tetris was always
still is.
Fans don't understand the Tetris every day, in and out, the back of the van.
That's. I mean, the playing music is fine and all, but really, it's about packing the van.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, we got the frickin' perfect pack today. That was awesome. Look at that.
So good.
Goddamn bullshit.
That's how my joke with my Tony, who plays bass in my band, and actually who just filled in on bass on Flipper, which is amazing.
Oh, really?
Is that Tight Loads would be the name of the magazine for van packs.
Tight load.
Tight Loads. We got to be careful about that marketing, but anyway.
It's the mathematics too. Like as the merch drops,
Right? As you
where do
sell
you put the
records.
Marshall now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. That actually
What
goes over
the joy
here
of,
now.
we got rid of the box.
Yeah, woo! How about small parts isolated and destroyed? That was the third record. That's the one. At this point, you're working with Jello. You're working with AT on that one.
Yeah, and we went to Vancouver to go to a big 24-track studio and record our album on 2-inch. Well, actually, yeah, that was the first 2-inch tape because Mama and Sex Man were 16-track 1-inch, I think. But I might be wrong about that. Actually, no, hold on. I think it was 16-track 2-inch. I might be wrong. Yeah, I think it was 16. 16-track 2-inch. So, but this was 24-track.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big leap for us to go to Vancouver, and it cost a shit ton of money, of course.
Of course, yeah. And that tape was not expensive. That tape was not cheap. It's very expensive.
Yeah, and well, studios were like the churches, the sacred temples where you went to magically make your big albums, and
yep.
And there was no, sure there was home recording like we did. We started home recording in 1978 on a TAC 4-track, and it was actually pretty high quality stuff at that time. But of course now it's like you got the multiverse of tracks in front of you on your computer, and I didn't put my phone on mute.
There you
my
go.
God! So I'm just gonna go away with that. And you can tell by the production that was small parts, isolated and destroyed, and
the day everything
became nothing. We're all recorded in the same session.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we had to go completely overboard with the big,
right?
With this big, awesome, like this is what the '80s sound like.
Right, just this huge sound, yeah.
and it was, well, we were having fun.
Yeah.
So it's again a bit of an odd sounding recording because of that, the bit of naivete and our first experience in a big studio and without a producer. We've never had a producer, I don't think, except for some CBC and BBC stuff that we had to do.
Was that an aesthetic choice? Was that something where you just wasn't of interest to you?
Say, like back to what I was saying about being a little bit too DIY for your own good when you just want to do it all yourself. I'm keen. I love recording music. I love being in the studio and so for me it was just great fun. But I'm learning and making mistakes, and then you have to live with your mistakes because you're the one that insisting on calling the shots. So
right.
But which is fine. I'm not ashamed of anything we did. I mean, Sex Man is a weird sounding album, but it's not like I'm ashamed or.
It still sounds good. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like so's Entertainment. That's a weird sounding record too. I mean, it doesn't stop it from being a great record.
There you go. So that's the next time we went back. We kind of learned our lesson in a way. Like actually, it was our sound man too. It's like Craig Bouget, who lives up in Powell River too, which is just sort of at the end of the road too. It's the bigger town, and the idea is like, okay, you just no gilding the lily, no go crazy with the effects in the rooms and everything. Just record yourself as you sound,
right?
As much as possible. So we sort of went in with a much more minimalistic idea of what we wanted the next album to be, and that album was Wrong.
So before we get to Wrong, just real quick, I want to call out Teresa because I feel like that's a song that for me is one of the iconic NoMeansNo songs.
Oh yeah,
and that's it barely clocks in at 2 minutes, right? Like it gets in and gets out. Like it's talk about the Residents commercial album, like getting it all in. Ultimately, I think Small Parts and the Day Everything, those are both like somewhat challenging records to a certain degree, especially when you consider the times, because that's what 88.
Yeah, 88.
Right? Which is like, let's just go and charitably say there probably wasn't a whole lot going on around that time that sounded anything like it.
No. So yeah, this is. I mean, we were by fumbling around doing things ourselves. We're actually also. It's like, well, there it is. It doesn't sound like anybody else. So, and nobody who listens to this stuff thinks that it's thinking about the production and the producer and how it was made, and they just think this is fucking weird.
Yeah.
But that's good. And again, the same thing. It's like, as long as the songs are strong, he's got good songs, then weirdness just makes it all that more interesting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely like the kind of record that you listen to and you're like, I have no idea what's going to happen next. Which is great. I mean, that's some of my favorite music, right? And that's
yeah. Same here. It's like on Spotify now or whatever, the streaming, and they just have like the algorithm kicks in and starts playing music and or the playlists because we used to make playlists all the time, mixtapes.
Absolutely, mixtapes. Sure. What else is a mixtape?
Like,
that's the first time I heard NoMeansNo.
Yeah.
I had a cassette that had Teresa Give Me That Knife and Rags and Bones, and that's the first I ever heard of NoMeansNo, and a girl made it for me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. I definitely heard some stuff, on somebody else's mixtape.
Yeah.
Or a band out of context, and you kind of go, oh, you may not have liked them when you heard the album because maybe you just weren't in the mood or whatever, it didn't strike you, but then you hear a song out of context mixed with others and go, hey, that was kind of cool. And then
there was one where I heard Steel Pole Bathtub and the Smiths on the same mixtape, and I was like, wow, what's happening here? It all made sense to me somehow. But
yeah, exactly. And so the radio format, where someone else is curating and it's just music coming on. I always like that. I don't choose the music, and I may not like everything I hear or care, but other times it's like great, especially if it's a show or a DJ that is probably going to be kind of interesting, and you look forward to it. So I kind of like, Spotify or whatever, it's not necessarily curated by human beings spontaneously. Yeah. Although I guess I suppose there's playlists that you can get people's playlists.
Yeah, they still exist. They're still allowed so far, Yeah. We'll see. The algorithm hasn't completely taken over yet.
Yeah, so the idea, and early on too, it's like our mission statement,
right?
Say that was like, we're not a type of band. We're just a band, and we write songs. And although they're generally loud, and often intense, and Robbie's writing, Robbie was really responsible for the emotional, intellectual character of the band because he's writing about himself mostly, and so there's a strength of feeling there, but the song is the song. Right. So we would approach it as a good song. Are we enjoying playing it? Does it mean something to us as we're playing it? And it didn't have to be, well, we need the pop punk sticks.
Right, yeah.
Even that's a bit of a lie because we would
need a ballad
album, and then we're like, oh, we better put out something pretty normal. So,
well, all right. So, do you consider Wrong to be a normal record?
Yeah, Wrong was our normal record. Like
okay,
rock and roll record from beginning to end.
Yeah, all right.
Nothing fancy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, exactly. And then when you listen to 0 + 2 = 1, then it's like, oh, okay, now it's back into the weird shit.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not like, Wrong is like a Beatles record or anything. Oh, I'm sorry. By the way, Polaris Music Prize winning record, Wrong. I forgot to mention.
Polaris Prize? Yes. We won a Polaris.
I know. That's awesome.
You're all out there going, what the fuck is a Polaris? Everybody in Canada says the same thing, unless you work for SOCAN or something.
Right, sure. But I still, like whatever. as bizarre and like, how many years late as they happen to be, it's still nice.
It was the Heritage Award.
Right.
Honoring music that came out and existed before Polaris was around. Which, and look, okay, I'm teasing and whatnot. It's nice to be recognized.
It's nice to be recognized.
Absolutely.
Of course.
And I was kind of amazed that A, we ended up on a list somewhere, and B, we won it. It was a shared award. There was 10 nominees and two of us won.
Yeah.
And we got a little Polaris thing. But you know what? I've never heard a word from them. No one
really?
ever told us that we won. I only knew we won because somebody told me that they
saw a thing
on
like
the internet. No one from Polaris actually ever contacted us in any way.
I mean, I guess it was 2021, right? So
yeah.
Could have been just a COVID thing. But you think someone would at least send an email?
I don't know. They're all probably lovely people. I'm not disparaging at all. I am grateful.
So, I know you're probably sick of talking about it, but with Wrong, I feel like that you would say it's probably your most popular record, right? As far as just endurance.
It was our most popular record, yeah.
I mean, because you got it's Catching Up, you got Oh No Bruno on there. I mean, but for me, it's sort of like one of the signature NoMeansNo songs, and I always appreciate that you guys would play it a lot. Is Rags and Bones, which is sort of like almost like NoMeansNo distilled into one song to a certain degree. That is reductive to say, but
I mean, it totally resonated. It was
So when that one comes in, like, do you just know? Like, you're like, oh yeah, this one's really cool, or is it just like, oh yeah, this one's good too? It's just like.
When you're the artist, like you probably understand, you're so close to what you're doing. It's like, I do think that, that you do, as when you write a song, you do get that, okay, I think we got this one right.
Right, yeah, you're like, this one is
one
pretty
I
cool.
It's got something a little more than the rest of them or whatever. But it was actually the engineer, when we finished that record, our engineer Cecil English, who now lives in Powell River, where everyone.
Wow, it says a theme, yeah.
And he was like, okay, you guys, you got one here. This is because when he's there, kind of that outside, the ears, like what a producer or engineer should be, and so he was like, yeah, this is going places, this album. And we were like, oh, great. Well, for me, it rocked. It did everything I wanted it to do from my standpoint. It was varied. It had highs and lows and emotions and jokes and
academic decathlon heaviness. Yeah.
We touched on all the bases and it worked.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of those records that, well, not that a teenager's picking up a record now, but a teenager can like listen to blindly, and like it can kind of almost feel like it's happening in real time because it's a little bit out of time as well. It doesn't sound like 1989. I don't know what that would even sound like, but
we never managed ever to sound like the time we
and then also, all right. So then you have the 91 is when the first live record, or the Live and Cuddly. I don't know if it's the first one, but it's the one, right?
Yeah, that was basically the first one. Yeah.
And but when it's 1991, but it's May 91, so it's before the Gold Rush, the Gold Rush hit, the grunge Gold Rush, if you will.
Right.
But that's a ripper. It's for me, it's in the pantheon of one of the better punk rock live albums. Which which can be very inconsistent. For every It's Alive, there's what, I'm not going to say it. I was just going to talk some trash, and I'm not going to do it. But that's a great representation, I think, of that era of NoMeansNo, because even even some of the older songs, like there's like you guys are playing tons of shows and just real running hot.
We were really peaking at that time.
It's also got one of my favorite album covers too, which is the you and Rob and your dad with the drums. Rob. It's so cute.
Not my dad.
Oh, okay. Oh.
It's only me. I'm the only one on there that has anything to do with NoMeansNo. That was a family photo taken of me tapping on drums.
Uh-huh.
I'm the middle age. The little kid is a cousin of mine. We were at a wedding.
Oh, really?
At a wedding, and that's just the wedding drummer. But I went over and Andy was my cousin. Like, can we play like every?
Yeah.
I want to hit the drums, and I was already like, I wanted to play drums. So that's me tapping, and my cousin and some guy.
That's crazy. I always had heard that it was you guys and your dad, and that's like.
Well, I'm straightening that story out right.
I was gonna say 30 years after the fact, we're gonna straighten that out.
just keep everyone guessing for a while. But.
Right, exactly. Well, it's a great picture nonetheless. Let's put it that way. So
that's the other thing, it's like the one thing is we didn't ever really want to fall into all the cliches from the from the art side of things and from the business side of things. It's like promo shots are like, oh god, like every promo shot looked the same, and it was all kind of like in our eyes,
like
people very pretentious, dressing up and all looking mean or whatever,
in front of the brick wall or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. We just so this idea of kind of being the anonymity a bit of the band, and and of course the Resonance thing. Well, they never showed their faces, right?
Right, that's their whole thing.
Oh, yeah. That's how you can start rumors and myths, legends. So yeah, that was fairly deliberate. So the album cover was always about. Like some of our album covers are kind of obscure and whatever, but the whole promo side of things was always about just kind of being silly and not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have that. What's the graffiti? The one with the graffiti.
Oh yeah, we'll give it up.
Yeah, hilarious. I mean,
that's real graffiti. And the thing is, we weren't even granddads. I was like 30 years old. Like, what? It's like. What, like a 12-year-old write this or something? It's like, come on, give us a break. Not yet. Now you can. I go play Dead Bob, and you just can write Granddad anywhere.
Right. That actually works. Yeah.
I will be soon. I think we're all going to. The eldest son will reproduce soon.
The record with Jello. That started off as it was like a soundtrack thing, like one of the songs originally, right? Am I remembering this correctly? That's how did the Sky Is Falling record come about?
Well, he was collaborated with Al Jorgensen, I guess, and doing the Lard thing, and
right, yeah.
And who else did he collaborate with?
Tumor Circus with Mike and Dale and Charles Tournay.
Oh yeah. Right, and he did the DOA thing, and then he wanted to. I don't know who started the conversation, but it was Jello didn't have a band anymore, but he still wanted to do stuff, and
he did that one with Mojo Nixon too. That was a busy year for that guy.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. Okay,
so,
I didn't realize all those came out the same year. It was all like 91. Yeah.
Wow. A lot was going on for sure. Like I say, we were kind of peaking at that time, and the scene was peaking at that time.
Yeah.
Grunge was just about to destroy everything,
right.
and everyone was into the loud punk rock music, and the squatted scene in Europe. This was like when we went in '88, we never played one club. Every place except for the first like 4 shows. The reason we got there was like a Dutch international music festival that they were handing out money to youth centers and clubs to bring in foreign acts, and record labels like the Conquerel could bring bands over, and we just got invited over to come and play, and it was sponsored. So I think we got $3,000. Our first 4 shows paid us like $3,000 or something, enough to more or less cover airfare. And,
sure, yeah, get you over there.
And played around in Germany, and it was our first time there. And went behind the wall, went behind the wall. We played in East Berlin. We crossed the wall.
That's amazing! Wow, what a time! What a moment in history too.
Yeah, it was, and I feel privileged that I was able to get there and see Europe in that time, because it really totally changed very shortly thereafter. Played in Hungary in Budapest in 1988, and just as the commies were crumbling and everything was about to fall apart, and in Poland and Yugoslavia, when it was still Yugoslavia. So it was really fun to go over, and we just, okay, maybe in Budapest it was an official club because everything was official. And,
Sure. Yeah.
but yeah, it was squats. Everywhere we played was squats, and it was all these squats were supported by the scene. All the punk rockers, and they communicated with each other. The word spread around the scene, and that's really how we established our audience over there. We just came and played all these places, and people would come to see us. I mean, we have to thank you, Jello. They all came to see us because of you. Right on. And and that's how we established our audience over there.
Right.
So yeah, things that was 88, then 89 Wrong came out, and this music was all super popular and big shows for everyone like ourselves. And
Then you got a 0 + 2 = 1 after that.
yeah,
Right?
and the 0 + 2 = on our final album with Andy.
Yep.
Following up, that was like 4 albums in 2 years, I guess, or
That's
something.
a pretty prolific run. I mean, like
That
that's
was one's a
fun
live
music.
album, so but
yeah.
we mixed that album ourselves, though. Yeah.
How was that experience at that time?
No, it was fine. It was great. It was same studio as we had recorded Wrong in, and Small Parts, and we got the tapes, and Cecil helped mix that live album from a Dutch recording. It's two songs from 2 Dutch shows, one in Groningen and one in Eindhoven, and they're big shows. I mean, this is the thing. It's like, it's a great show, and we're having a great time and playing at a big place. I don't know, 500 or 600 people, and it was really exciting. It was a really exciting time, really fun.
Yeah, definitely. So you've got, God, we're only to the 90s, Jesus. So, but that's so you got 0 + 2 = 1, and that's I think that's around the same time that Forward to Death, like that Virus 100 is happening too, right?
Yeah.
When did you? When did you do that Victim Family record? When was that? What year was that? That was
I think we did 1990 and 1991.
Yeah.
I think the Germ is 91, so I guess White Bread Blues would have been in 1990. I think 80.
Which
no,
fantastic
90.
record.
It was after Wrong. It was after we recorded.
Okay. So how was that? Because obviously, hell of a band.
Oh yeah, it was just wow. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And really exciting for me, of course, because I love the band. They're all great fellas, and we had a great time. They came up, and we had the studio. Cecil is a really nice guy too. The studio is very casual. It's very punk rock but professional, and they got to hang out in Vancouver for a couple of weeks, and we had a great time, and a good. It all went well enough to do it again with the Germ. So
exactly, it's obviously it went okay, right?
yeah. It was kind of my first foray into working with other bands on a more kind of professional level like that.
Yeah.
I listen back and think, there's things I could have done better as a producer, but I did the best that I could, and everyone was happy, and it was a lot of fun, and the records are great. Again, it's like, the strength of the songs is the strength of the records. So.
Right, precisely. There's only so much you can do with the production aspects of it, but yeah, it does strike me as what is one of the great, like, oh yeah, that makes sense kind of moments within for that band as well as for you guys.
Yeah, they really came into focus, I think, when their first. I guess they had 2 drummers before Tim, I think. Didn't the first 2 records have 2 different drummers?
Oh boy, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
the first time we played with them was I'm sorry, I don't remember names, but was a really great drummer, and that's the other thing. We played this show, and he only had a hi-hat and the toms, and just ripped it.
Yeah, they had there was a few that they had. I'm trying to think of the guy. Some of this is a little bit before my time. But I remember hearing about Victim's Family for years before I ever actually saw them.
Right.
It was like hushed whispers. Oh, Victim's Family. Oh, okay. Cool,
They were another one too. That's like just this awesome band, but didn't manage to capture a wider audience. And maybe just a little too much edge to that, but. anybody listening to those records or saw them live would be like, whoa.
Although Jello just pretty much abducted him into Guantanamo School of Medicine, so.
Yeah. Not Tim though. Tim's out. I mean, he's drum teching for Roger Waters, right?
Oh, is that what he's doing? Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. He was a hell of a drummer, man. Like, I mean, they're all
what I was going to say is that when we originally saw them was the first drummer. I think was their original drummer, and then I seem to recall when they came to doing their second album that he had left and they had someone else in briefly.
Yeah,
was the drummer for the second album. Don't quote me on it, but
no, you're right. I think it was. I think that was Eric, if I remember right. But Tim was playing with Brian Kehoe for a while, also.
Right. And then Tim joined the band, and that's when they came up to do White Bread Blues. And when Tim joined, it's just like the band kind of suddenly boom. Like they really gelled and came together, and the songwriting just got really strong. Like White Bread Blues is such a well written album.
I mean, arguably, I think they're best. Like as far as just for repeated listenability for me.
Well, Headache Remedy still, that's the thing. The White Bread Blues, Germ, and then Headache Remedy was just
actually that's a pretty good run. You're right.
That's a pretty good run of records, and all strong, really strong.
Tell me about Mr. Happy. That's
Mr. Happy. Well, Mr. Happy, we became Robbie and I again. So Andy had left the band, and we were what do we do now? Well, I guess we do what we did before. We don't know who's going to play guitar, so let's just we were still writing. Robbie was actually, if you ask me, Robbie was just hitting his peak at that point, writing.
There's some monster songs on there.
Yeah, in some ways, I think that's our best album.
I mean, I think The River is definitely, for sure, like, that's like statement of intent. So the whole beginning of the record is just statement. I mean, I don't think there's a song under 5 minutes until Madness and Death. If I remember correctly.
Yeah. And it just gets really quite intense. And like I say, Robbie had found his voice again because he'd lost his voice in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
He had like 2 operations on his vocal cords to work it back. So, like in 1984, essentially Andy was the lead singer because Robbie could not sing a note at shows, and it took him a while, 1.5, 2 years before he could sing again, and then it took a while to build up the strength. And Andy would continue singing half the set anyway, and a lot of the songs he was already singing.
Yeah.
But finally, by the time 0+2 rolled around, and then we were doing Mr. Happy, like Rob's voice was fully back, and his tone dropped to half an octave, and he was peaking right at that moment.
There's a lot of power behind it, like a lot of not that there wasn't before, but it sounds like a dude that really is like, it's business time.
Yeah, really becoming focused, especially in his writing.
Yeah.
And so in many ways, I see that as our strongest album. And that, again, we did it at Profile Studios. It was our last record we did there with a different engineer, and we had brought in some Neve strips for all the techies out there. We had some Neve. Wow.
People do love hearing about that stuff.
Oh yeah, Neve. He said Neve. I think he said Neve.
He said it, everybody.
Yeah. So it kind of had a different sound to it. It was of all the records we recorded and mixed in that studio, Mr. Happy also had a different sound.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and even the artwork kind of like is like, oh wow, okay, what's happening here?
Yeah, and although I kind of, as for me personally, it's like it's our best album and our worst cover.
I mean, it's really okay. I
even though it was my, maybe it's because it was my idea, and I'm like, but that is Tom's first appearance on a NoMeansNo project.
Fantastic.
Because that's Tom. He's Mr. Happy on the cover.
Oh, is he really? I never knew who it was.
Okay. I had that fake nose stuck to him, and
you can't really tell.
And his allergies were just going nuts when we were taking. So the nose kept falling off because his nose was running with snot.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, we took all those photos, and that was fun. But yeah, the thing about Tom is that know Tom obviously earlier in the 80s, met him in the mid 80s, and got to know more in the latter half of the 80s. And he was playing in his own band called the Show Business Giants, which he started with Andy as well. Andy was playing with him. I think Andy was in the first incarnation of that band, as well as some other folks and in Victoria.
Yeah.
Then I got involved, and I don't know if you've ever heard any Show Business Giants stuff.
I haven't, no. I know of the name.
If diverse doesn't really describe it entirely.
Got it. Okay.
So we're talking, you listen, and we did, like, I don't know, 7 albums or something, like 6 albums, a lot. And they're like from the very basic recordings to some pretty good recordings. And I tell you, there's not one record that sounds like the next, and the songs are just all over the map. So for me, it was super fun to do. Again, I wrote a song. It's like a television theme. It was all about Mr. Sulu from
Right, sure, yeah, absolutely.
And Tom's writing is really, really good too. It's nothing like NoMeansNo or even the Hanson brothers. It's his own thing.
I was going to say, since you invoked Tom, like we actually haven't. They were mentioned in passing, but the Hanson brothers, I think, are so interesting. And I came to them like somewhat on the later side, with the Sudden Death record, without realizing that it had been around for like a while. Hanson brothers, right? I mean, like, how did that?
Well, okay, to rewind again, and with Andy and Robbie and I, we were playing. He was in the band now, and we were playing. Like I was saying, Andy tried not to be like a regular guitar player. Tried to, we were working on our sound and whatnot, but. Then we all like loved the Ramones. It's like, and
how could you not?
It was like, let's just write a Ramones album. Like, okay, let's fuck all the weird stuff. Let's just be as totally straight as we can. And literally, deliberately, and we went out, and between the three of us wrote like 7 songs in a couple weeks.
Sure. Yeah.
And then practiced them and played them, and I think it was over a burger when trying to figure out what we'd call ourselves. Well, we have to be a fictitious set of brothers. And, well, we're Canadian, so it should probably have some sort of hockey and beer drinking thing, and so we thought, oh, the Hanson brothers, from the movie,
from Slapshot,
Slapshot, it's perfect. Okay, we'll be the Hanson brothers. I'm pretty sure that's how that was born. It was just a joke. It was just all about having some fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's like ostensibly hockey-themed Ramones band, right? I mean, it's kind of like...
Yeah. And a bit dark and stupid all at the same time.
Right. No, I mean, when I heard that stuff, I could not possibly have heard it at a better time. I was like, this is amazing. This is I was like, and literally that's how it was described to me, is that, the NoMeansNo guys have a band that it's Ramones songs, but all about hockey. I'm like, I must hear this immediately.
Yeah, well, it became a thing. It was a thing.
Yeah.
We were concentrating on NoMeansNo because all the way through the 90s, or through the 80s, and we recorded a bunch of those songs. Maybe it was the 0+2=1 session.
Yeah.
We had some time. It's like, let's just bang out those Hanson Brothers songs just so that they're down. We have them, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and Greg Workman got wind of this tape and heard it. And he was like, and then Andy had left the band, and I'd been playing with Tom already for a couple of years, and then Greg Workman was like, "You got to put this out. We got to put this out.
Right.
We're putting this out. So whether you like it or not."
Yeah.
And it was like, well, it's not quite enough for a whole album, and then say, "Hey, Tom, like, do you want to?" play with Rob and I, and let's do this Hanson Brothers thing. Let's have some fun with that. And then he wrote a couple more songs, and then we went in and recorded Gross Misconduct in my friend's basement.
Right.
And very low tech again.
But that, I mean, it's not like...
And that's how Tom ended up in the band as we're playing with Robbie and I.
Because you knew you could play with them, and you knew, like you had that context,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's It was so great. I remember being mad for you guys when that band called Hanson became popular. What? No, that's not the Hanson brothers. Stop.
No, and it's not, because I believe they call themselves Hanson.
They're just called Hanson, but
there
they
was
are
already a
brothers.
Hanson brothers out there.
I was so annoyed by it. I mean, I was annoyed by that for a number of reasons, but like, just I was like, come on.
Well, hey, they went on to make some good beer, apparently, and that's
Okay. Well, good.
always a check in the right box for me.
All right, good for them. That's good.
Yeah, good for
That's good. That's good for them.
I think Wayne Gretzky went on to make good wine.
Oh, there you go. So it all comes out in the wash, as they say. So all right, so Hanson Brothers, and then that's just kind of is a continuing affair. I remember there was I guess second It's Alive mention. There was the live record that kind of referenced the Ramones.
Oh yeah, It's a Living.
It's a Living. That's right. Great. So great.
Yes, I'd say that.
Oh, and there was the Black Flag, My Game, right? My Game instead of My War.
Best album in the world.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but My Game instead of My War, right? If I remember right. There was
Yeah, My Game. Yeah. With the puppet, yeah.
Again, this couldn't possibly be any more.
And The Sudden Death, that's also a parody.
Yeah.
You know from what?
I do not. No, what is it?
It's DOA's Prisoner in 13, first single.
You know what's crazy? I heard the Hanson Brothers record first, so I didn't get that.
Yeah, well, this is like 78 when that single came out.
Yeah.
But it was an iconic, for us anyway, you know.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
It was an iconic singles cover, so
Absolutely.
yeah, they were all parodies, of course.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. That's, shocking, right? Okay, so let's do, all right, Worldhood of the World, right? That's
Worldhood of the World is our first full length.
You got Tom on that one.
Yeah, yep. Tom. And we had enlisted Ken Jensen, not Ken Jensen, sorry, Ken Kempster. Because when Tom joined the band, musically it was, a lot more than his technical abilities to play. He's a talented musician, but he plays chords and sings songs, right?
Right.
And so, because we had so much fun with the Hanson brothers, we said, you want to see if you can play with some NoMeansNo and be our new guitar player, and it was definitely a challenge for him at the beginning.
It's a very different set of tools, almost.
Oh yeah, totally not anything that was in his bailiwick or whatever you call it.
Which is funny because I think that's kind of for you guys, that's kind of one of the more straightforward records that you were talking about earlier. Like, I feel like. Yeah, for sure. And also when we were going back out on tour, we realized, of course, it's going to be a lot of pressure on Tom because everybody's going to be comparing him to Andy and all drawing their, there's still people like, oh, I'm Andy era fan. Right. There's like drawing like groups of support or something.
So, and we had done some double drumming on some overdubbed some drums on certain songs in the past, and the idea of double drumming was an idea we bantered around. We never seen way back a band from Vancouver called Ogre, who came, and they had two drummers.
That's a good band name, Ogre.
They were a great band, and it was just like, wow, this is awesome. This punk rock band, two drums banging away. So it always kind of stuck in my mind or our minds, and then we thought, well, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we, NoMeansNo was, we were getting good gigs and good money, and it would be like sort of the comeback, and we did the album. And so we thought, well, why don't we? Ken was an awesome drummer as well from Victoria and a friend of ours, and played some in Show Business Giants and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And just, why don't we try being a four-piece and have double drums? And that way, when we go out there, it's just different, right? This is not the three-piece NoMeansNo. This is different. And sure, there's a new guitar player, but there's also this drummer, and
it's going to hit totally differently. Yeah,
distraction, and just take the attention off Tom alone, and also, let's try something different. So So he joined, and then Ken, and then we were a 4-piece for the next 3 years. And The World Hood of the World was our first full length with Tom, and some of Ken is on that as well. And yes, this goes back to what we said before. It's like, okay, I think we just need to do a straight ahead fucking Balls to the Walls album here.
Right.
So we don't lose. We're losing them. We're losing them.
Quick, throw in some dick jokes.
Yeah. Quick, do the pop punk now.
Right, exactly. Yeah, straightforward.
And so again, pretty deliberate. And
that
was a fun album to do as well. I really liked the songs, and The Jungle was the first song that Robbie had words, and I just wrote music for it.
Nice.
It was almost always the other way around.
Right,
I would have music, and he would put lyrics to it, and that was fun to do. And again, I think the songwriting is pretty strong on that album. Recorded in a basement in Victoria. We kind of gone back to the basics. Didn't go into a big studio for that. And then toured that way until about 97. And then we went back to being a 3-piece again, and worked on Dance of the Headless Bourgeoisie.
Right. Yeah. So that's the one. And that's what, the 98, right?
98 that came up. Yeah. And we did a Hanson Brothers in between. I'm talking about the Hanson Brothers. What it became was we did this album and we toured. Then we went back to NoMeansNo, and it was like, well, when you're a band and all you do is the same thing all the time, especially if you're a band that goes out and just tours constantly,
right?
You just burn out on it. You burn out on the sound, and you don't have a life. It's like, especially NoMeansNo, the songs, you just can't, like, on the road again. It's not. It's really not a NoMeansNo thing, and we need to be living and get away from it a bit and recharge the batteries. Yeah. And the Hanson Brothers was just
it's just like just pure fun, right?
No break. In fact, the less brains, the better.
Well, especially because, like, NoMeansNo is peace and love, not exactly like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers or something. It's like there's a lot to it.
So it was actually very convenient. You could we release an album, we go do like whatever, all the tours for that album, and then we go like, okay, well, let's take a breather. We can work on some Hanson Brothers and go tour that. So we still have to make money. We still have to, either that or get a job. And so it was kind of fun that way. We could bounce back and forth between the two bands, and we were joking too, because one time, and a lot of people comment on this, is that with the two bands, Canada is, as we mentioned about 3 hours ago, that is this long linear drive from one end of the country to the other. Everything pretty much happens not far from the U.S. border, and but with what we did, people claim, of course, we did it all the time, but I think we only did it once. Was we toured all the way across Canada, because we were a 4-piece, and then toured all the way across Canada to the Maritimes, and then turned around and came home as the Hanson Brothers and could play all of the same clubs again.
Right, because it's a totally different band with a totally different sound, right? So that's why not. Yeah, that's great.
So it made more sense touring Canada, because you get to the end like, oh, now we got an 8-day drive to go home.
We got to come back, and what do you do? Go through Upper Saskatchewan? Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
So that was fun.
Well, and that's good. That record's got, it's almost like there's stuff that's almost like kind of krautrock on there. There's just sort of like the pirate, almost pirate shippy kind of like
Youth. Yeah. I love that song.
yeah, that's
no, that was that album. It kind of reminds me a little bit of 0+2. It was kind of like,
I can hear that. Yeah,
not totally focused on what's going on this record.
Yeah.
It was a good set of songs for sure. A couple songs we played a lot. I mean, "Can't Stop Talking" was that was a staple from then on. We played it all the time, and it was a crowd pleaser. And I can remember the drumming.
It's like name that tune, but you can only do it from the drums.
It's not out of my head.
Actually, you could almost kind of do it with your songs.
So a couple of. I mean, again, the song Dance of the Headless Bourgeoisie. That's usually the one people skip over, but
well, it's like 8 minutes long.
If you got nothing better to do for 8 minutes, you can listen to that song, and it's a cool song. But it's a challenge, and so again, I think they were all good, strong songs. This album wasn't quite as focused as some of the other albums were.
One. How about One?
One.
How about that one? You heard of that record?
Yeah. I almost put that as my number 2.
Yeah.
After Mr. Happy. I really, really like that album from my standpoint of how we wrote it, how we played it, how we recorded it, and how it feels. That album.
I mean, it's what other record would have Beat on the Brat and Bitches Brew?
Again, it was sort of like it's a long album, but it's only it's 8 songs, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and you got Graveyard Shift to start it off, and that which is like a fantastic statement of intent opener.
Yeah, and that was kind of the crowd pleaser off that album that we played a lot. But A Little Too High is just, I love that song, and Our Town. It's just it just had such I just really got absorbed in the feel of that album. And Rob's writing, again, of course, he's writing a lot of it. I did a bunch of the music. Graveyard Shift was my music, Rob's lyrics. And then it was the bookends. And Rob had this idea because he was a huge Miles fan for years and years and years.
Bitches Brew, especially.
It's classic. Yeah, and he got it in his mind. I'm gonna write words for that song.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was just a project for him.
Yeah.
And he came up. That is entirely his arrangement. I mean, I helped a bit figuring drums out and stuff, but it was he fully arranged that song and sang it and put the words to it, and that's 100% kind of his baby. And then we were playing Beat on the Brat just because we'd often do Ramones covers and songs and encores and stuff, and we did our own NoMeansNo cover band. We'd play a few shows. Ramones cover band.
I was gonna say that may have been in a review that you guys made a NoMeansNo cover band. Yeah.
The name. So Beat on the Brat was like, again, kind of just being cheeky, and it was a joke. All right, there's Miles Davis. Okay, there's the Ramones, and it even made more. We turned the tape down. We played it slowly, and then actually slowed the tape down even more, just to kind of bookend. Okay, here's NoMeansNo right there.
Yeah, you got it all in too, right?
We lie somewhere in between.
Right? Yeah, no, it tracks. It makes sense. And I feel like, especially because that was like 2000, right? I mean, I feel like that was
2000 that came out. Yeah,
there wasn't a lot. I feel like I've heard more inventive Ramones covers now, like Milk Banana, stuff like that. But I feel like at the time there really wasn't like a whole lot of. Well, there were some bands that basically sounded like they were covering the Ramones, but
maybe they
weren't.
Well, you don't want to desecrate the monument, right?
Right, exactly.
It is. That's on. You don't touch that one.
That's
all perfect. You don't need to do anything of that.
Please don't desecrate that monument. Thank you.
Right.
So then there's about a 6-year break before.
Yeah. We put out the compilation, the kind of best of.
I forget the name of that one. Yeah, I have it. But
That's
A People's Choice. Is that right?
The graffiti on the cover.
That's the one. Yeah, I remember but it's the one with the graffiti to me is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. The one with the graffiti. All those songs that were already released before.
Right.
That was kind of we were whatever. We didn't have much new material. Wasn't much of a prolific time at that time. But we still wanted to go tour and have some shows. So it's like, let's just put a best of together. What the hell? We got to that age, and a lot of young people that they can buy something that kind of covers the decades a little bit.
Yeah.
Nothing terribly earth-shattering about that release, but we did some hard touring on that one as well, just to stay out there and stay playing shows.
I mean, it's a great cover. I mean, like we've adequately established that. I mean, that was like, even if I didn't know what the band was, I'm like, I'm gonna listen to this. This has got to be interesting. This is not gonna be boring.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. So that's, we did that, and then finally we got back to doing some writing, and we did Ausfahrt, which came out in 2006, I think. So a little bit later, but of course, there was the stopgap. We did another Hanson Brothers album.
Of course, yeah. Who can
third and final installment,
Yep.
Apart from the live album. So that came out in 2001.
Yeah.
And we toured that as well. So
was that just something you just kind of felt like there was like an end date on it for you, or is it? Just...
No, it was just let's do one. I had some more songs. We kind of ran out of ideas a little bit, maybe.
I mean,
Compressor Head was kind of like my last stab at writing Hanson Brothers songs.
What if Hanson Brothers but robots? Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're all going.
Different. Right? I mean, yeah. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Why not? Let's just get the show on the road. And Ausfahrt was, that's kind of a funny album. Again, was kind of like, let's just, keep it simple. Let's just do some bangers, and there's nothing too weird, although, of course, people go, well, there's some weird stuff on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, it's pretty straightforward, but there's a couple epics.
Yeah.
Mansion, right?
Mansion in the Sky, which is my only regret about that song is we played it too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to that going, oh, it's too fast.
Yeah, that's
too fast. It didn't have the groove that the demo had. We kind of blew through it, and but I really like that song. And Till I Die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that song. Love playing that live. Slugs Are Burning was actually a Hanson Brothers song that didn't have any words. And then Robbie just wrote these words, Slugs Are Burning, to do it. And like, okay, that sounds great. And
let's record it.
We put it on the album.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was really not pedestrian, but that was like, okay, we got to write an album, guys. Let's do it. I got a bunch of music, and here's all these songs I got Rob, and he came back a couple weeks later. It was like, okay, I wrote a bunch of words, all this stuff, and we started banging it out. And so it was a real like, okay, we got to do an album. Let's do it. Let's make it kind of like this, and it has that feel. It's like a solid album, lots of energy. Not maybe as iconic as some other stuff, but I tell you, we did that album. We came out. That was the busiest ever for NoMeansNo. The most touring in a row. The most money I ever made.
Yeah, I saw you a few times around that time period. Yeah. It seemed like you were hitting it pretty hard.
And it was kind of like, it's kind of when it dawns on you. I've been doing this a long time, and here we are doing it again, and I'm busier than ever, and the shows are bigger and better, or as big, just whatever. They're just like back in the 1990 again. It's like good shows and lots of them, and going different places, and that was a real busy time coming towards the end.
As far as bringing it into doc as a live band, how does that conversation come about?
Well, it didn't really happen in any sort of straight way. It was like, we were going through different personal things in our lives, and 2008, we took off almost entirely. Didn't really do anything. I don't think I played my drums for like 10 months, and then we got it rolling again. I think with some Hanson Brothers stuff. Nothing new recorded, but played some shows, and then we had the idea of doing four tour EPs. This was our plan.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, I remember that.
We were like, okay, let's just do. I don't want to write a whole album. I don't want to go in a studio and have to do an hour's worth of music and spend weeks working on it. Let's just write 4 songs, go in and do an EP, and go play shows, and then do it again and go play shows. So it's like making an album, but spreading it out over 4 EPs and touring, regularly. And we only, unfortunately, got two.
Two of them, yeah.
The third was the electronic, the dub artists that, because Robbie now was, by that time, all he listened to was dubstep. And,
oh, really? Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, he didn't listen to anything else. He was starting to just fade away from guitar music entirely, actually. So, those were the last two projects we did, recording projects. Never got to the fourth one. Finished touring up in June of 2013. Went home and was like, "Yeah, we need to take a break."
Right.
And like I say, Robbie was just, I don't know, he was getting to that point where he was moving on. He just had a young family. He started his family at the age of 55, I guess. Yeah, and
which you can do when you're a dude, yeah.
So, suddenly now he's got the young kids. I had the young kids earlier on. Now he's got the young kids, and then his health. He started having problems with his hips, and he was, he's 69 now, so he was, whatever that was, he was just at the end of his 50s, I guess. And and then it just kind of started out as, we'll take a break, and then it was a long break, and then he just said, you know what, I just don't think I can go out there.
Yeah.
I can't get in a van and drive around and stay in hotels anymore.
It's work. People don't like talking about that aspect of it, but it is work.
Yeah. He just wanted to, he had young children. I want to be with my young children because I'm an old man.
Right. Spend what time you have with them instead of.
Yeah. And so it just kind of faded. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was more like, I guess that's all we can do. And, and I guess in typical NoMeansNo fashion, we didn't do anything normally. No farewell tours, no like, we're going to call it quits and come and love you all one more time. And
just, like Kiss doing their 17th farewell tour.
Yeah.
Too now.
DOA, there's the classic show. How many times they've had their final farewell, this is it tour.
Final Revision 15 tour. Yeah.
He will be playing in front of people till he can't stand.
Yeah.
And he'll probably still do it.
It'll probably have someone propping him up. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. He's just like, no, this is what I do. As well as being a city councilor for Burnaby here.
Which is so fantastic. I mean, I always love hearing about people in punk rock getting into government. It's like, well, it's one thing to yell about it in songs, but it's like to actually do something with it.
Yeah.
Pretty
and
cool.
Realize how little you can actually do.
Exactly. Well, there's that too.
But no, his heart's always in the right place. He's a workaholic, and So anyway,
couple things from the comments. Will there be a reissue of the NoMeansNo discography on LP and CD?
As long as AT can get it together and do it. That's a tough job. It's a big job, like I said earlier.
A lot of work.
Art has to be recreated now, and vinyl's expensive. It's expensive proposition. Vinyl is selling. People will buy it, but no one's going to get rich off it. So it takes time, and absolutely, if the answer to that question is yes, somehow, if it's possible, it will all be put out again.
And this one isn't from the comments, but you know the band Sloan? Are you familiar with
Yes.
Sloan? Chris Murphy has repeatedly called you guys the greatest Canadian band of all time.
Thanks, Chris.
And he's made a special point of saying it, so I'm making a special point of saying it to you. I don't know if you've ever been in conversation with him, but
I have not. I don't know those fellas.
He's for a power pop band, and I say that as a fan, he has a surprisingly deep knowledge of punk rock.
Yeah,
and he comes from a very earnest place, and he's a really good dude. He's been on this show a few times.
Yeah. I think I heard an interview with those guys, a podcast interview, and they all sounded like regular just dudes and doing what they do, and they were a really good band. What they were doing, they did it, and
they continue to do it. They just put out a pretty
like I say, it's like it's the strength of the material, as they say. It's like whatever genre you play, if you if you put yourself into it and you have the talent to make it work, it's going to be good. Like running the pub, I mean, we had a little bit of punk rock, but mostly singer-songwriters and different types of bands coming through. And so I saw a lot of different stuff, and which is fine, stuff I would not have gone out to see if I was at home. But I'm there, I'm running the sound, I'm the house sound guy. And it's like, you can just see the ones that are just, they're putting themselves into what they're doing. And it may not be your style, but, it's real. It's real for them, and it's real for the people listening to it.
And I will say personally that last year on my best of records, which, we'll go ahead and say trend towards a certain type of sound and genre, like that Sloan record was absolutely in there. And people are like, what? Yeah. Sloan? I'm like, have you listened to it? It's great. It's a great record. And it's like they're, again, it's like their, I don't know, 12th record, 13th, whatever it is.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time, too. Yeah.
But, Chris Murphy's a big fan. And I figured I'd shout that out because he's brought it up to me multiple times. I'm like, okay, dude, I get it. You like No. I do too. Peace and love. Peace and love.
Awesome. Well, as I said at the beginning, it's lovely to be, how did we put it? To be recognized.
It's good to be recognized. Yeah. And it's, hey, like, to a certain degree, I think there's almost a thing that happens where if a band's just around long enough and just keeps doing it, like you get like a little bit of like, oh yeah, they're around. It's definitely important. But
longevity is half the battle. Just sticking with it long enough, and people just eventually start to notice.
Well, but then when it's like something where it actually means something to people too.
Well, yeah.
That's even better and more important.
Exactly. Yeah, we got the Dead Bob project is literally, and I'm not trying to sound cliche. I mean, It literally would not happen if it wasn't for so many people on the NoMeansNo Facebook and whatnot, all like, yeah, put out another album. We want to hear more. And when I announced that I was doing it, it's like, oh, can't wait. It's like it just makes you feel, okay, great. I'm not wasting my time here. Or even if you're just doing it for yourself, I'm not saying that's wasting your time. I'm just saying, yeah, okay, awesome. I want to do it. So
yeah, absolutely.
I want to hear it. Okay.
I think it's a really cool record. I mean, it came to my attention. I was like, oh, cool. Like, that's awesome. And, and straight up, there is a NoMeansNo cover in there too, but there's also I think there's.
That was the arranger in me again. That song, Lifelike, from Dead Bob. I guess we haven't really mentioned Dead Bob yet too much.
At the beginning, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah,
that was the sex mad of this interview.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, last week I think something
like that. Yeah.
As I said early on, I was just doing these demos and sort of finishing songs or seeing them to the end or seeing if they would get to a good end and become something. And I was going through a lot of old demos, and I had a Korg M1. Anybody out there who was a keyboard player, I bought a Korg M1 in like 1990 or something. I guess they're vintage late 80s synthesizers or keyboards. And I learned how to do the programming on it. It was like really rudimentary 8-bit shit back then. But you could, you could sample and then you loop things along or whatever. You could build songs.
Yeah, for sure.
And so a bunch of NoMeansNo stuff was written that way on that keyboard, Lifelike being one of them. But it's this clav part that's like, if you listen to the keyboards, the whole song is this clav line, and that's basically the thrust of the whole song. And trying to teach that to Tom to play on guitar, it didn't work. It just it just couldn't be played. Not him, but any guitar player, just wouldn't be right on a guitar. It's just he figured out the riff, but it's just not the same sound. It doesn't have the same feel. So on the recording, I do put a keyboard on as well as his guitar playing. But Robbie wrote these words, and I thought it was one of the best collaborations between my brother and I. I was so pleased with what he had written and sung. because he's also was singing the melody. It was a lot to do with him, and we recorded it, and it ended up being like the bonus track on the double vinyl. So
Right. Yeah.
instantly relegated to obscurity.
I was gonna say recipe for success right there.
Yeah, exactly. And a song we couldn't really play live. We just couldn't do it. So I was happy to do it. I loved it, and it was out there. But that was the end of it. And then I came across the original demo. I was going through those those little disk drives or whatever for the Korg M1, and found the original demo. I was like, oh fuck yeah, there it is. That was the what I was going after, and a little slower, and the arrangement was a little different, and I thought, I'm just going to do this again just for fun. I'm going to put real drums and do it up the way I kind of initially envisioned it, and I wanted it to be kind of unisex, like not just a male vocal perspective, more of just the man and woman duet. It didn't turn out to be a total duet, but I ended up on the final mix being more singing the lead at the beginning, and then Selena Martin comes in and takes over in the middle bridge, and we sing together going out. But I just wanted the song to be a much broader sound, a much broader arrangement, and purposefully, and be choral and be, whatever. So that was done just as for my own yayas.
Your own edification, almost. Yeah.
But then it's like, fuck! It turned out this is great. Just exactly what I wanted it to sound like. So that's why I decided. And then in the end, it's like, well, it's just the perfect title for this album.
Yeah, no, it works really well. And then there's a lot of highlights on it. Like I like White Stone Eyes a lot. That's a good one.
Yeah, and that's the other Robbie song.
Yeah, and like all of the baroqueness that kind of comes in some of the in the back half too. It doesn't seem tacked on, it seems natural in the flow of the record at all. So
yeah, and the diversity of it is like, well, it's nothing new. I mean, That's nothing new. That's what NoMeansNo has been doing forever. And listen to the Show Business Giants.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't even know you can find it streaming. I don't think Tom's put anything up streaming. I don't know where you would even find it to listen to it. Maybe it's on YouTube or something.
I mean, it seems like people just put things up on YouTube, and if
exactly.
it doesn't get taken down, that's fine.
It's some of that stuff is from fucking left field. But his songs are really fun and really strong too.
Well, I think it's a great record, John. And
Thank you.
I'm really glad that you came on ostensibly to talk about it and also talk about literally almost everything else.
Yes, well, I warned you before this interview started that how much time do we have?
Right.
I tend to ramble.
Luckily, it's the internet, so we got all the time in the world. And I'm very thankful that you decided to spend so much of it with me and with the listeners. Last thing, this is the only canned question that I ever ask anybody, and you can choose to interpret this however you like, but
okay.
Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Mm-hmm. Because it makes a lot of noise. Literally. I love hitting those drums as hard as I can to be loud, and then when loud music got into my life, this is great. So yeah, I do what I do because I love music, and I love giving her, pounding them.
I'm glad you're doing it, and I'm glad that you're continuing to do it. And if I may be so bold to suggest, let's not make this the last Dead Bob record.
Well, that's I said there was this huge cache of songs, and I've worked on all of them to some extent. This is just the 9 that were completed that seem to go together.
All right.
So the next album is, I've already know what songs are going to be on it, and a couple of them are finished, and some are very close, and some still need a bit more work. It won't take 10 years to release.
I was going to say maybe quicker turnover on this one. Sure, yeah. You know how to do it. You have the skills. You have the know-how, right?
Yeah, so. It's already on the docket.
Fantastic. John Wright, thank you so much, man. Appreciate
Conan,
it.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you over the interwebs, and I'm glad you got some rest after Caterwaul.
Let's not make it the last time. We don't have to make it quite as long next time.
Well, maybe I can see you out there at this time of year.
Yes. Yes, let's make that happen. I would like that very much.
Absolutely. I'll get down to the States and play some shows. I'll make my way to your neighborhood.
I would love that. Love that. All right, take care.
All right. Thank you so much. Ciao. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
There he goes, Mr. John Wright. A cool guy. Let's hear a song from the Dead Bob record. I'll play this out. Actually, at this point, I think I have to do Lifelike, right? It has to be. So here it is. This is Lifelike. Lifelike, Dead Bob. You can find that on Bandcamp. That's right. deadbob.bandcamp.com. Real easy. Don't have to spell anything all crazy or anything. I'd like to thank Mr. John Wright for spending so much time with me. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I certainly did, if you couldn't tell. Go get the Dead Bob record. It's out there. Of course, the name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you ever so much for listening to it. This show airs normally on Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Streaming on YouTube and Twitch live. Archives always available. ProtonicReversal.com. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. No ads, no sponsors. No kidding. Always free. Always, 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 always. However, if you do like the show and are just you want to get episodes sooner, you got to do it. $1 a month at patreon.com/Protonic Reversal will gladly achieve that goal. And of course, if you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around the internet, even leave a review. All of that helps people discover the show, beat back the almighty algorithmic overlords. It's just a darn nice thing to do. Lots of good stuff coming up. Tim Jones of Cheer Accident coming up this Thursday. There's a bunch of stuff coming on this month. Tim Green of the Champs, John Newton of John, David from Tunic. That's a heavy Canadian move, apparently. Anyway, thank you, as always, for listening to the show. It's always appreciated. Back on a more regular schedule until I'm out and touring a little bit. Spring, fall, whatever season this is. Stay safe out there, everyone.
Can you hear me now?
And check you later.
Out on Route 128, in the dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? To my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio